right, everyone, going to be breaking down the U.S. Open pools here for you guys, whether they're your office pools, your family pools, your friend pools. Going to be breaking that down here for you guys. 9 to 5 golf. Let's go ahead and get into it. And so if you guys are familiar with this, if you guys watched the past 2 major videos, you know that we've been pretty successful in telling you guys which picks were the best picks for each tier. Only one miscut thus far this year. And the way we're able to do that is by using the 9 to 5 data here, which is basically set up to give us both safety and upside in the picks, so potential to make the cut and also ability to go out and have a great finish, potentially win. That's what we're going to be measuring. So we're going to be using this data to give you guys the best picks in each tier. And again, we've been pretty successful thus far doing that. Hopefully you guys have had success using these picks. If you did, make sure to give a thumbs up. And so we go ahead and get into tier 1. And the biggest issue that I had with tier 1 is the exact same issue that I had with it for the Masters and for the PGA Championship. There's really no reason to not pick Scottie Scheffler. Now, the same as the Masters and the same as the PGA Championship, I'm going to tell you guys that if you are not playing Scottie Scheffler, you're going to be playing Xander Schauffele. Okay, so that worked out for the PGA Championship for anyone that faded Scottie. And if you guys played Xander at the Masters, that did not work out. So kind of 50-50 there. And so the reason why you're playing Scottie is because he is simply the best of the best right now in the world. And so there's no need to get cute. Let other people make that mistake of not playing Scottie. But if you know your kind of family, your office, and everyone's just going to pick Scottie, you could gain some massive leverage on the field by going with Xander, who's really not that much worse. And I think his win at the PGA Championship is actually going to be huge for him going forward in majors. And then after that, it's Rory. And so we don't really need to get too different with this section really at all. Okay, so there's really 3 options to me: Scottie, Rory, Xander. You could mess around with Collin Morikawa or Bryson DeChambeau. I wouldn't blame you for that, but there's also no real reason to play those guys either. So let's go ahead and break down just Scottie, Xander, and Rory. And so when we look at those 3 golfers, we can see based off of all the key metrics that we have, okay, there's specialist data, course history, which course history is a little bit different. We're looking at the past 2 U.S. Opens, the PGA Championship, and then the Masters. So I want to be looking at the past 2 majors just to see how golfers have played in the majors thus far this year. Then the U.S. Open wants the U.S. Open to play like a U.S. Open, if that makes sense. So we are going to be looking at the past 2 U.S. Opens, even though it's a completely different course. The point being that Scottie Scheffler is number 1 in all of those. In my database, this has only happened 3 times. Every time that golfer has won. And so, yeah, Scottie is definitely the pick here in this tier. And again, the only reason why you would not be picking Scottie out of this tier is if you think basically everyone's going to be on him. And if that occurs, it would make sense then to go with someone like Xander. Xander, guys, ranks top 5 or better in all the key metrics that we're looking at. That rarely happens as well. That tells you just how good Xander and Scottie have been, especially compared to the rest of the field. So if you're not playing Scottie, Xander is going to be the next safest option. And then if you guys wanted to, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to play Rory. He's slightly worse than Xander, but not by much. But I still think Rory has a little bit more name value than Xander. And so I think if people aren't choosing Scottie, they're going to pick Rory. So I think you can still gain a pretty nice edge by going with Xander. So nothing different from the past 2 videos here for you guys with this tiers / pools video. Go Scottie or go Xander. Let's go ahead and get into tier 2. So to me, tier 2 is probably going to be the most interesting of the tiers in terms of gaining an edge on the field, because to me, there's really only 2 options here that we should be choosing. I think a lot of people are just going to go with the top player that's named in the tier and probably go with Cameron Smith. And I don't think that's wrong. Cameron Smith was just talking about how the greens are playing extremely fast. And we have seen Cameron Smith play well on extremely fast greens. That kind of helps him out, I think. I think that's a big edge that he gains on everyone else. And so when we look at Cameron Smith, he's going to be 14th in the 9 to 5 model, which if you look at this tier, not that good. Like you'd rather go Hideki or Tyrrell Hatton there. If you look at outright odds, he's still 13th, which Hideki is a little bit better. Make cut percent, they're all going to be about the same. And so what this is kind of telling me is that Hideki is probably going to be the choice here, which does feel a little bit risky, but I also don't think a lot of people are going to be on Hideki. And so I did just narrow down this tier into the top 5 picks from the range. Now, I think we're really just going with Cameron Smith or Hideki. Again, looking at Hideki, he's just been playing great. Has 15 straight make cuts now. 8th place finish in last week's event, 7th place finish recently as well. He is someone that has been vocal kind of about wanting to have a start prior to a major, which he did do last week. He did not do that leading into the PGA Championship because he withdrew with an injury. So I think he is setting up very well for this week and been a very consistent producer at the past few majors and the past few US Opens. Stat-wise, His game is telling us that he's not going to be making that many mistakes. Effective scoring here is key stat number 1, which is my measure of a player's basically ability to not make dumb mistakes on the course, ability to make the cut, but also have a top finish, which is already what the 9-5 model is doing. Anyways, he's going to be top 5 in recent form in the field, and so that all bodes well for him. Terrell Hatton is someone that I would be fine with playing, but the last time we saw him was at the PGA Championship where he finished 63rd. And the fact that he's playing on LIV now, we don't have a good gauge of how well he's playing. The LIV results have proven to not be really relevant in terms of predictability for these majors, which is a little bit unfortunate. So we don't know exactly what to do with Hatton. And for that matter, we don't know exactly what to do with Cam Smith, who also is coming in off of a poor start at the PGA Championship. But again, this course should set up much better for his game. That is proven by the 9-5 specialist data, which is pulling in all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament. So what I mean by that is each tournament, there's a different course designer, fast greens, the weather playing in, the location of the tournament, how many bunkers there are. There's a bunch of bunkers here, the types of greens. And that might sound a little bit nuanced to people, and I kind of tend to agree with that. But that's why I add it all up into one data point to see who's going to be a good fit for that event. And Cameron Smith, that data is telling us that. And so my pick here in this range is going to be Hideki, which I'm kind of doing because I don't think a lot of people in your guys' pools will be choosing Hideki. And I think that's a big edge that you can do because he probably holds the least amount of name value, even though he is a former Masters champion. So that's going to be my pick here in tier 2. And now tier 3 is a little bit interesting as well because we're going to see that Tony Finau is kind of a standout option compared to everyone else. We're also going to see that Corey Connors and Keegan Bradley are also going to be standout plays compared to everyone else. Now, that is just looking at the 9-5 model, which I mentioned this a couple of times now. My model is measuring base floor, so like both safety and upside, so their ability to make the cut, but also have a top finish. Whereas you look at something like the outright odds, which is being pulled in from a bunch of different sports books, like their average odds, and putting that into a rank, that is just the upside that a golfer has. And that's how Vegas views them. So Vegas views Tagala as the most likely to potentially win. But also when you pull in like the made cut percentage, they're also saying he is a little bit risky as well. And so that's where you could chase someone like Tony Finau, who has a 76% made cut percent, or Corey Connors, who has a 78% made cut percent, the highest of this group. And so this is definitely a weird range where you could probably chase a little bit of safety with Corey Connors and Keegan Bradley, or maybe try to go with a little bit of upside with Tagala or Tony Finau. Wyndham Clark's been playing terribly lately. Sam Burns has been playing terribly lately. Mingwoo Lee and Willie Z are just a little bit too hit or miss. And Seb Straka, he has had 3 out of his past 4 starts be top 10 finishes. The one miscut was at a major, so I just don't think he's mentally geared up to play at majors just yet. So let's go ahead and touch on these 4 golfers here a little bit deeper. So the reason why you'd want to pick Corey Connors is because he has the highest made cut likelihood, and that's a lot due to the fact that he has made 23 straight made cuts. And when we look at his kind of his form here, we're going to see just a bunch of made cuts in there: 20th, 6th place, 26th place finish, 13th place finish, 11th, 44th, 38th, 25th, 13th. So he has shown some upside as well. It's not like there hasn't been upside there with Corey Connors. The biggest issue with Corey Connors is what he has done in the past 2 U.S. Opens. Miscut, 65th place finish, which is terrible after that. He has played better thus far, though, in the past few majors. 26th place finish at the PGA Championship and a 38th place finish at the Masters. Now, he has always been someone that has played well at the Masters, but the fact that he had a 26th place finish at the PGA Championship is actually pretty huge for him, because that has been an event that he has played poorly at. And so I'm kind of willing to write off kind of the poor U.S. Open history in the past because of that PGA Championship and because of how well he's playing, because other than that, top 10 in recent form, top 10 stat fit, and then a top 10 specialist as well. He should be the safest to make the cut as well. Maybe we worry about his upside a little bit with the length of the course being pretty long. That could be a worry, but he should be good to go here. If you are not playing him, I do think I would go with Tony Finau next, who has been a little bit hit or miss. Either his game is on or it's a little bit off, but still 7 straight made cuts, does have the upside as well, coming in off of an 8th place finish. But really, I mean, you could go to Gala. His game does set up well. Vegas likes him a little bit more. And then Keegan Bradley, kind of a sneaky option. 6 straight made cuts. I would feel much more comfortable with him if he had a better finish than what he had last week. That's my biggest concern with him. So for me, I'm going with Connors, going with the safe option, but again, kind of a weird option there as well. So after that, we go ahead and jump now into tier number 4. And tier 4 is also kind of an interesting spot because Benny Ann is going to be the one that's popping up the most. And really, all these other golfers are probably golfers that we don't need to think about, honestly. It's kind of simple. Robert McIntyre's coming in off of a victory that was a little bit random for him. I mean, he wasn't a bad play that week. Justin Rose, Sungjae's been a little bit hit or miss. Justin Rose, you expect to make the cut. You got Russell Henley, who's always been someone that's been a little bit hit or miss. Some people are kind of referring to this tournament as Oakmont, which was the tournament in which was a U.S. Open in which the USGA lost the greens. That was the one in which Dustin Johnson 3-putted to not win the U.S. Open when he was set up for kind of an eagle putt. And so I don't know. We're not playing DJ. And so really the option is Benny Yan, who's been playing extremely well. Vegas somewhat agrees with that as well, where he's coming in as the 27th best odds to win. Maybe you could roll with Sungjae, where I would agree with Vegas that he probably is a little bit more likely to win than Benny Yan. But Sungjae his form has been a little bit too hit or miss. But let's go ahead and pull up those two golfers because those are the two that we probably should be choosing from. And maybe I'll toss in Russell Henley as well. And so one of the biggest reasons as to why Benny Yan is popping up is because he excels in total driving and ball striking. 4th in the field in ball striking, 19th in the field in total driving. If you're looking at any stats to look at this week for the PGA Tour in terms of success at the US Open, it's those two stats. And I know most of you guys don't care about that or even maybe know what I'm talking about, but that's a good thing. Let's just put it that way. That's a good thing that he's playing well in those two stats. Those are the two stats where I'd want to see him performing well. Also, his form is great. 6 straight make cuts, has shown upside as well. Made the cut at the PGA Championship, finishing 43rd, and played well at the Masters. So he has that going for him as well. And so all in all, he's the best option here. Sungjae, I kind of mentioned he's been playing well or missing cuts. So we see 3 top 10 finishes mixed in there, and then a missed cut mixed in there as well, which is what that 109 is denoting there as well. That has been his season. So he's a little bit too risky. He could have some upside. I don't know if you're making 2 pool picks for you guys, if you're making 2 of them, maybe in one of them you do go Sungjae to chase that upside. But the safe play is going to be Benny Yan. And then I will say Russell Henley is not a terrible option as well. To me, Benny Yan, Russell Henley are probably very similar options. Russell Henley has always been someone that's been a little bit too hit or miss to trust, but he's been playing well now for quite some time. And so I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to go with Russell Henley as well here. So it is kind of a toss-up. Russell Henley has at least played in a few more majors as well. So, I don't think he's going to be too worried about that. Both of these two plays to me are kind of about the same. It's really the fact that Vegas is telling us that it likes Benny Yan a little bit more. That might be the difference maker. I don't know what I want to do there. Because again, you could chase the upside with Sungjae. Russell Henley's been pretty solid. And then Benny Yan can't putt. Benny Yan is a terrible putter. And maybe that does lead me to getting to Russell Henley instead because of these fast greens. I might be going with that. I think that's going to be the option there. And so as we jump into tier 5, I do want to point out that, yes, this week is much more difficult than the Masters and the PGA Championship. Those 2 weeks, it was very much easy to be on the correct play in each range. Like that was not a struggle at all. This week, a little bit more difficult. And so take that for what it's worth. It's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to predict for everyone then, right? So I don't know how you guys go about gaming that, but I did want to call that out, that this week is a little bit more difficult than the previous 2 weeks because the previous 2 majors were very easy to predict on paper, and that's actually what ended up happening, whereas with how this one's set up, a little bit more difficult. And tier 5 will somewhat continue that trend. So Alex Noren is someone that I think I've called out the past 2 majors. Kind of fell off throughout the weekend at the PGA Championship, which was a little bit unfortunate, but still a good player. He's probably going to be the one we go with in this section. You could roll with Harris English, who does have a good track record at U.S. Opens because he's typically a good total driver and ball striker. But also Billy Horschel is someone that I think I might be getting to as well. Recently won on the PGA Tour as well. That's something that we'd like to see. But really, this range is pretty wide open as well. A lot of people might like Dean as well, who's been playing well on Live. Maybe you could go with him, but I worry that since he's at the top of this list, people might just roll with him because of that. Like people that don't know. So I don't really want to risk playing him, if that makes sense. So to me, it's probably just Noren, English, or Billy Horschel. So let's go ahead and touch on those 3 plays. All right, so the biggest issue really with Alex Noren is his terrible form at majors in general. The 12th at the PGA Championship was great, though. We liked that there. That was awesome. Really helped vault, I think, a lot of people with their pools at the PGA Championship. He was kind of the clear option in his range last time. Not exactly the clear option here, but still not terrible. His poor U.S. Open history and poor major results does worry me a little bit, but he is still pretty strong across the board. Minus that kind of course history, comp course history, if you will, where he ranks 58th in the field, top 15 specialist, really good stat fit as well. And recent form still ranks out top 15 in the field, even though he does have a missed cut recently. But if we pull up his player profile here, we're going to see that all the data points are pretty strong. Obviously this is color coordinated, one data point in the red, one in kind of the orange, and then a couple in the yellow. Most of the data points that we're looking at all in the green. Like, that's a simple way to tell you guys a pretty decent play across the board. He's the correct option in this range. That being said, Harris English has been pretty good. He has played well previous U.S. Opens. I don't mind him. But a play that I think is sneaky, and I think I might go with Billy Horschel. I don't know if I love it, though, but I do think it's maybe the correct answer. He is someone that does tend to play a little bit better in majors, tends to be someone that figures out ways to make the cut at majors. I will say, though, he is someone that I could see if you pick him. He could be someone that just doesn't play well and, like, misses the cut by a ton. Whereas the likelihood of Alex Noren, playing extremely poor and, not having any chance to make the cut is very small. Like, Noren is probably the safer play, but Billy Horschel is tough to ignore because Billy Horschel has been playing well. So we see a 12th, we see a 7th place finish mixed in there, a victory. Then he missed the cut, and I don't really mind a missed cut after a victory. I'm kind of willing to write that off. And I believe that was a team event as well, so, like, who cares? That was a Zurich Classic. Since then, 52nd, 8th, 24th, and 15th. 15th place finish last week was kind of huge. And he is someone that did make swing changes about a year ago, and I think we're starting to see him come into kind of the correct form with those swing changes. So I am torn between Billy Horschel or Alex Noren. I probably will be going Noren, but I wouldn't talk you out of Billy Horschel as well. And then jumping into the brute, that is going to be tier number 6 here. Okay, so tier 6, yes, very difficult. Obviously, these golfers are in tier 6 because there's some of the not bad golfers, but just not as good golfers in the field. And so let's kind of zoom this out a little bit. And so looking at, we're not going to have any clear options in this range. That's the worry. Now, Lucas Glover is popping, but he missed the cut last week. He was terrible last week. Had he made the cut last week, I would have been fine with him. Kurt Kitayama is someone that not terrible. Adam Hadwin just had an 8th place finish in his last event. Kind of okay with him. Eckroat, Taylor Moore, decent options as well. Aaron Rye is probably going to be my pick in this section. I'll get into that in just a second. Mark Hubbard's made like 16 straight cuts on the PGA Tour. I do expect him to make the cut. Davis Thompson, a little bit longer off the tee. That could be a good thing for him here. But it is an extremely kind of limited list in terms of which players we should be playing. Harry Higgs is kind of fun, just as an FYI. He won back-to-back playoffs on the Korn Ferry Tour, which you guys are unfamiliar with that. It's kind of like it's not the minor leagues for the PGA Tour. It's kind of that, though. And then he was able to qualify for the U.S. Open. He's kind of hot, if you will, right now with his golf game. But he's not someone we should be picking either. All right, so I have all these plays pulled up on the cheat sheet here. And yes, again, very difficult range. We're trying to get lucky here. And so I do think it's worth calling out. Yes, Mark Hubbard has made 16 straight cuts on the PGA Tour. His form, though, has been like descending, if that makes sense. So like his results are starting to dip a little bit lower each time. That typically leads to a player missing the cut. Whereas, we kind of like to look at the reverse, whose form has been ascending like steadily. That's kind of been Aaron Rye, who's now made 5 straight cuts. We see a 4th place finish mixed in there and a 14th place finish mixed in there. 8th in the field in ball striking as well. And another stat that I'm looking at is a combination stat, effective birdie to bogey ratio, which is a measure of birdie to bogey ratio, and then bogey avoidance. Bogey avoidance is going to be huge here, and he ranks 17th in the field in that combined stat. And so I am kind of defaulting to him. Lucas Glover coming in off of a miscut last week. He is kind of a good stat fit, though. And then Kurt Kitayama is a good stat fit. Also someone coming in off of a miscut, so that does worry me. Akshay, he could get hot here, but I don't think we need to go there. Eckroat has played well at the U.S. Open in years past. Jaeger is someone that I wouldn't be surprised to see make the cut. And then Tom Hoagie, kind of just more name value, I would say, than anything. But to me, the pick is going to be Aaron Rye in this range. He's just been playing well recently. A pretty good stat fit as well. 11th best in the field. And, in a range like this where there's not going to be that many good options, I'm trying to find a reason to play someone. And I'm kind of hanging my hat on the fact that he's the 11th best stat fit. Really, in this range, you're just hoping for a made cut, and I think he gives us the best opportunity at getting a made cut in this range. So with that, let's go ahead and jump on into kind of who my picks are going to be in each tier here for you guys. So again, the first pick that you're going to want to go with is going to be Scotty Scheffler, kind of just the clear-cut option in that range again this week. But if you're not going with him, then you should be going with Xander Schauffele after that. Then if you really wanted to, you could go Rory, but I don't think you need to do that. From there, I do think I will be going potentially with Cam Smith. He's kind of my alternate choice, but I think the choice in this range, just kind of given how many people are going to be on him, I don't think that many people are going to be on Hideki, so I am going to suggest Hideki as the play in the range. He's actually the player that does rank out the best in that range as well. From there, tier number 3, one of the more difficult tiers because you could chase safety with Corey Connors and Keegan Bradley in terms of they should be able to make the cut, or you could chase maybe more of an upside with Tagala, who Vegas thinks has the best chance to win. If you're doing that, though, you probably just go with Tony Finau. My worry is that putting could end up mattering a little bit more than what it's projected to, just because of how fast the greens are. Tony Finau typically not a good putter, and so that could be a worry. I'm going to go with more of the safe approach and go with Corey Connors. And then after that, again, kind of my issue with Benny Ann is a little bit of the fact that this could be a tournament in which putting does become a little bit more important than what we're thinking. So he would be my pick if there wasn't that concern with the greens. I could be putting a little bit too much into that, admittedly so. And it is kind of funny to say, well, I'd rather go with Russell Henley then because, well, he's not the best either. He's someone that can get hot with his putter, though. A little bit of risk-reward play is going to be Sunjam, and I'm actually going to give him kind of this orange tag here for you guys, which, again, if you are making 2 pools, I would suggest in Tier 4, he be that option for you guys because he does hold a lot of upside in that range. You know, over his past 4 starts, 3 of those have been top 10 finishes, with one of those being a missed cut. From there, for me, Tier 5 does seem to be a little bit more simple in regards to who we want to be on. It's either Billy Horschel or Alex Noren. Kind of in between on those guys. For now, I'm going to go with Alex Noren. He just feels like the correct option in that range. But if you want to go with Billy Horschel there, I wouldn't blame you. Again, guys, this is much more difficult to predict than the past 2 majors. It just is best field that we get each year. That's part of the reason as to why. Looking at tier number 6, to me, the choice is more simple to me here in tier 6. I'm trying not to overthink it too much. Aaron Rai, just the best stat fit out of this tier. Let's just roll with him. Again, some people are going to be tempted to play Tiger Woods. Don't do that. Some people are going to be tempted to do Phil Mickelson. Don't be that person as well. Just play the best golfer in that range as it sits right now. That does appear to be Aaron Rai. That's going to be all for this video. 3rd time doing it this year. I know you guys have appreciated. If you guys could show the love again by giving a like and maybe commenting anything there, if you guys appreciate this coverage, that does help out the video as well. Make sure to give us a subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate that. And I do plan to do an Open Championship pools video as well. So appreciate it. That's going to be all for this video. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. If you guys are someone that does do fantasy golf weekly or, want to get into it, head on over to 9to5sports.com. I know a lot of you probably don't. So, if not, just give a like. That does help. Thanks for watching. And as always, let's keep cashing.